Nick had looked forward to this evening all week. Their friends Harry and Lilia had rescheduled the dinner party so Nick and his wife Sam could attend. He had no doubt their family had been heavily on the minds of the people who loved them since the sudden death of Sam's beloved father. Everyone was concerned about her and how she was holding up after losing one of the most important people in her life. Nick had found himself watching over her even more closely than usual, looking for signs of trouble. She'd been remarkably composed since she helped solve the 4-year-old mystery of who had shot her father and left him a quadriplegic. Too composed, if you asked him. Other than one breakdown in the immediate aftermath of closing the case, she'd held it together as the media went wild over the story of the Metro Police Department deputy chief, who'd kept vital information about the shooting of Skip Holland to himself while pretending to be a friend to Skip and his family. There'd been round-the-clock coverage of the gambling ring and the involvement of the longtime city councilman, Roy Gallagher, and his associates, Mick Santoro and Dermot Ryan, as well as the lengths they'd gone to in order to protect their illegal enterprise. Other prominent city residents and political players had been caught up in the dragnet of arrests related to the gambling operation. The arrests were ongoing a week later. People were shocked by the news that Skip's shooting was connected to the murder of his first partner, Stephen Coyne, whose case had gone cold in the ensuing decades. And through it all, Sam had kept her chin up and her eyes on the ultimate prize of seeing the men who'd shortened her father's life, and Stephen's, brought to justice. Nick had never been prouder of the woman he'd married than he'd been in the last 2 weeks. Sitting beside his wife at Lilia's beautifully appointed dining room table, with Sam's hand tucked into his as they chatted with their closest friends, Nick was filled with a sense of foreboding, a fear that her composure couldn't possibly last. Eventually, she would break, and he could only hope he'd be close by when she did. "It's really not funny," Lilia was saying, when Nick tuned back into the spirited conversation. "And we do not need to tell that story." "It is funny," his friend Dr. Harry Flynn replied, "and we absolutely do need to tell it." Lilia Van Nostrand, Sam's chief of staff at the White House, had met Nick's longtime friend Harry through them, and they were madly in love. That was obvious to anyone who knew them. On the recent trip Harry had taken with Nick to Europe, Harry had confided that he planned to marry Lilia as soon as he possibly could. Harry's beloved dropped her head into her hands, resigned to telling the story despite her objections. "We were in Chincoteague," Harry said, grinning gleefully, "at a bed and breakfast. Lilia woke up early and went down to get coffee wearing only her robe. I figured it was safe at 6 a.m. Her face had gone bright red with embarrassment. "Who else is going to be up at that ungodly hour?" "Did you or did you not have your pearls on too?" Sam asked. Lilia shot her an offended look. "Of course I did. I'm not a savage." Everyone at the table lost it laughing. While the others focused on Lilia, Nick found himself watching Harry. The way his friend looked at Lilia had to be the way Nick gazed at Sam, as if he'd found the other half of his soul. There was, Nick thought, nothing like knowing for certain you were exactly and finally where you belonged, with the person you were meant to find since the day you took your first breath. Nick couldn't be happier that Harry had found his own Sam. "Anyway," Harry continued, "there she is in the breakfast room of the B&B, in nothing more than a sexy robe, and the pearls, of course, when the Senate Majority Leader walks in wearing only his boxers." Derek Kavanaugh, Deputy Chief of Staff to President Nelson, choked on his wine. "No way." "Yes way." Lilia's blush overtook her entire face. "And he started talking to me as if he wasn't standing there in nothing more than his underwear." "Did he know who you were?" Nick's lawyer friend, Andy Simone, asked. "Yes. He asked me how Mrs. Cappuano is doing since she lost her dad, and if I think the vice president is going to run in the next election."